Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to Copper Jacket TV. So a federal judge in the state of New York has just granted a temporary restraining order against New York's new carry law, the law that basically bans people from carrying just about everywhere. Now this temporary restraining order was both granted in part and denied in part, and it's different from an injunction. So we're going to talk about what parts were granted, what parts were denied, and what changes you can expect to see. So let's get to it. Now, real quick, I want to thank you all very much for watching these videos, subscribing, and liking them. It really does help out quite a bit. And if you wouldn't mind, check out the main sponsor of this channel, which is the US CCIA. With your US CCIA membership, you get things like self-defense liability, which is perfect for today's video topic. You also get reciprocity maps, online education and training, and how to respond to certain situations. So it's definitely worth checking out US CCIA. Okay, so let's go ahead and start off by talking about what this temporary restraining order is. So again, it was granted in part and denied in part. So this temporary restraining order is basically just a band-aid while the plaintiffs seek a preliminary injunction. Now, if they get a preliminary injunction, if they actually get an injunction on this, that would stay in effect until the case is over. So until the case actually had a final decision, that would bar enforcement of this law by the state itself. This temporary restraining order just basically covers the time frame between now and when they get their decision on a preliminary injunction, based on the fact that this judge thinks that the plaintiffs have a good chance of winning. Now, if you live in New York or you're just curious, I'll put a link down below so you guys can read exactly what's being enforced and what is barred from being enforced as of this point. It's basically the first paragraph that gives you all of that information. So let me just go ahead and I'll try and streamline it for you. So what this temporary restraining order bars New York from enforcing is several different things, not just where you can carry, but what they can do in their process for getting a permit. One of the things that it blocks is the good moral character issue. So if you know, basically good cause or just cause was found unconstitutional. So New York and California and other places came up with this whole good moral character thing to sort of replace that. Another thing that's been stopped is in-person interviews. In-person interviews have also been stopped by this temporary restraining order, as well as having to provide all of your social media accounts. So you guys know that they wanted all the social media accounts going 3 years back, so you'd have to find all your social media, provide all the emails and everything else that they would need in order to find them, right? That has been blocked by this temporary restraining order as well. Another thing that's been blocked by this temporary restraining order is the need to interview your spouse, your wife, and whether or not you have to give up information about those who live in your house, who's living there, how old are they, ages, and all of that stuff. That is also blocked by this temporary restraining order. So on top of just where you can carry, it's the process for getting your permit that has also been affected by this as well. So this temporary restraining order is going to help people get through the process without all of the blocks that New York has created. Now, another thing I want to tell you about this is that this order, this temporary restraining order, has already been stayed by the federal judge, but only for 3 days. This 3 days is basically just giving the state time to try and appeal this decision. It's just like trying to get an emergency stay. If the state wants to get an emergency stay, they can petition the circuit court for that, and this 3-day stay allows the state time to do that. Now, based on current decisions by the Supreme Court, I don't think that the state will get their stay in this. I think that the temporary restraining order will be allowed to hold, but still, this will not take effect for 3 days. So keep in mind that even though the judge made this decision today, none of the enforcement of this new law is actually going to take effect or be barred from taking effect until 3 days from now. Now, when it comes to where you can carry and what's considered a sensitive place, that's where a lot of the biggest changes happen. For instance, Times Square was considered a sensitive place. Well, the judge specifically mentioned Times Square in his order, stating that that should not be considered a sensitive place and people should be allowed to carry there. Another place that he addressed directly was public transportation. In order for people to be able to move throughout the city, sometimes they need to use public transportation, and so it's barred from enforcement of that new law on public transportation as well. So those are two pretty big ones. Now, a couple things that he held up here are going to be things like schools, federal buildings, basically things that existed prior to the new law. So schools, federal buildings, daycares, things like that. Now, there were several different places that I think the judge dropped the ball on here when it comes to enforcement, where enforcement is still going to take place and the new law is still going to have an effect on these places, one of which, and I get it, it's a temporary restraining order, so an injunction would obviously have a much broader effect than this temporary restraining order, but it's houses of worship. So when it comes to houses of worship or places of worship, this new New York carry law is still going to have an effect there, which basically means that you won't be able to carry in houses of worship unless, expressly permitted by whoever runs that place. So as long as they say that they, allow you to carry, they want you to carry here and so forth, and they put up signs saying that you can carry here, then you can't still carry at places of worship, which is kind of odd to me. But again, temporary restraining order, it's not the full deal. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about what this means for where you can carry. And keep in mind, I'm not a lawyer. This is not legal advice. Make sure that you do your own research. But basically what this means is most of the areas that you couldn't carry before because it was just about everywhere are now open for carry. That means public sidewalks, private businesses, even if they don't have a sign on the window. Now, if they do have a sign on the window that says that you're not allowed to carry in there, that becomes more of a policy issue, right? So they can ask you to leave and so forth, but it's not necessarily a crime. So you can still walk on public sidewalks, public parks, public access, things like that, public transportation. You can basically carry and go about your daily business as long as it doesn't interact with a federal building, a police station, or one of the places that you couldn't interact with before, including, now churches and stuff like that. So there are a lot of places that have been opened up, but basically now you can conduct your daily life. You can leave your house, leave your apartment, you can head down the street on public transportation or on the sidewalk without any worry, and you can, go do your shopping, go do your stuff, go get the things that you need to get, and go back to your apartment or your house, and you'll be perfectly fine under this temporary restraining order. It's only those places, again, that were pretty much, blocked before, like federal buildings, courthouses, and stuff like that, with a couple exceptions like churches now. But there are mostly open spaces that you can carry again under this temporary restraining order. So while it was granted in part and denied in part, the part that was granted is really more about, your daily life and what you're doing out there. So again, being able to wake up and use the permit that you went through all of that for is fantastic. It's definitely an improvement over what New Yorkers have been going through over the past few weeks or so. It's been absolutely ridiculous. So hopefully there is a preliminary injunction that's granted in this case that will stop enforcement completely of this new law in New York, and hopefully that will go all the way to the end of this case where they find that it's unconstitutional, which it clearly is, especially after Bruin. It's totally unconstitutional. They're just trying to basically find a way around Bruin with this, and they're not allowed to do that. So hopefully there's a good decision in the very end, but in the meantime, people should be allowed their freedoms. So I wanted to make you guys aware of that. And again, if you want more information, check out the link directly to the order down below. Thank you all very much for watching. Please like, subscribe. You guys have a great day.